And I will be your MC for today's leadership election. On behalf of the PCAA Board of Directors, the Leadership Election Committee, as well as all of our volunteers, welcome. And welcome back to those of you who were here yesterday. Based on what I've heard, everyone had a great time yesterday. We are in for a jam-packed day of fun and excitement, not to mention an opportunity to meet some new friends from across this great province. Today, my friends, by the end of the day, we will have with us our new leader and an invigorated membership that will take on and defeat the NDP in the next election. I'd like to introduce you now to a lady who has done two ladies who have done a tremendous amount of work over the last 9 months. They have spent countless hours on the phone, over email, and traveling this province to make this weekend a special event for all of us. It's with great pleasure I welcome our convention co-chairs, Krista Balsam and Cynthia Williams.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Calgary. My name is Krista Balsam. I'm the president for Fort McMurray-Conklin Constituency Association, and this is my co-chair, Cynthia Williams, president of Calgary Buffalo. And we're your very proud co-chairs today. And I just wanted to congratulate all of you. We have over 2,000 registrants today for this convention. You guys all blew our expectations out of the water when we started this planning process, and we're really excited about it. And one of the other things, for any communications person in the room, you'll be really proud to know we trended nationally #1 yesterday on social media. So we'd like to do that again today, and we need your help to do it. So in order to do that, please use our hashtag #PCLeader. It's been up on the screens. It's in your programs on the back cover of the delegate program. And feel free to tag PC Alberta in it. You'll make our communication staff super happy, and it'll be up on the slides throughout the day, so you'll even be able to get your photo on the screen if you take some selfies. So thanks for helping us do that. And we just wanted to give a few thank yous to some of the core team that helped us pull off this weekend. As all of you know, you're all volunteers, you're all proud party members. It takes an army to pull off a convention this size. And everyone who volunteered this weekend is super appreciated. It's been so many hours of work. But we wanted to give a special shout out to some of the key folks that have helped us go above and beyond to pull this off. Dave Hancock and his deputy, Josh Traptow, for pulling off our chief returning officer and all the rules and regulations around voting and registration. Speaking of voting and registration, they couldn't have done it. Patty Wickstrom and Lisa McIntosh for taking the reins and pulling that together. Kelly Taylor has been our volunteer manager and working with over 150 volunteers this weekend to make sure everyone knows where they're going and has a great experience. Our Master of Ceremonies, Ali Talakshi, you're just helping us pull it all together behind the scenes, so thank you for that. We're really proud of our #GirlBoss youth chair this weekend, Emily Gilroy, who you'll hear from in a minute. Our dynamic communications team, Sherry Wilson, Sabrina Grover, Joanne Meredith, and Demetrios Nicolates for pulling together all of our communications and working with our over 40 media outlets that were registered this weekend. Steve Audie, also from Fort McMurray. A shout out to all the Fort McMurray delegates in the room. I'm really proud of us all for being here. Steve Audie's handled all of our logistics and security this weekend, thanks to him. Michelle Chigley and Jessica Mitchell for handling the St. Patrick's Day party last night. Jason Copping for our Big Ideas panel later today, and our Big Ideas panel, thank you for participating. And Rick Fraser, our MLA caucus liaison, who's worked with us super hard to make sure our campaigns were in the loop for the last few weeks. And then we also want to thank our convention partners and the people we've worked with. Anna and Gabrielle at the TELUS Convention Center, you've been miracle workers. Michael and the whole Evolution crew, you guys are a blast, and we love working with you. You're super professional. And Violetta and Cassandra with Meetings and Conventions Calgary and Tours in Calgary. You guys have been so welcoming, have your Province Convention here and bring so many visitors from across the province just to see how great Calgary is. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia for a few other words, and have a great weekend. And don't forget to tweet.
President of Calgary Buffalo, and I'm very proud of our Calgary Buffalo team that's all here today. The volunteer effort that it took to get to this convention actually started long before we even booked this convention. It started with a group of people who were absolutely determined that this party was not going to die. People like Troy Wason, our executive director, whose determination and commitment has never wavered. I don't know anybody more committed to our party than Troy Wason. People like our board of directors. These people are not insiders. These people who are people that silly put up their hands and said they'd help after the insiders left. So these are incredible people. And we want to say a very special thanks to our president, Catherine O'Neill. I don't know how many of you know this, but after the last election, when things were down and people were glum, she ended up giving birth to a little boy. She picks him up and she goes around this province and she talks to all the members and voters. She lets people yell at them, get their frustrations out, and she listens to their ideas. We really want to make a very special thank you to Catherine O'Neill. Woo! And we want to thank all of you for coming. This is great to see. We're very proud of the way this is looking on the media. I don't know if any of you are catching what's going on TV, but you all look great. So thank you very much and have a good convention.
Thanks again, Cynthia and Krista. You guys have done an amazing, amazing job. One of the ways to measure the long-term sustainability of an organization, particularly a political organization, is to see how engaged and committed the next generation of members are. Over the years, we have seen the amazing value our Progressive Conservative Youth Association has brought to the PC party. Not only that, our PCYA members have over the years held senior leadership positions within our party, as well as gone on to become MLAs representing our party. I'd like to welcome an individual, a talented individual to the stage, who represents the next generation of leaders in this party and this province. Please join me in welcoming the convention's youth chair, Emily Gilroy. Emily?
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are having a fantastic time this weekend so far. On behalf of the Progressive Conservative Youth of Alberta, we would like to welcome you to the 2017 Leadership Convention. My name is Emily Gilroy, and I am the Youth Chair for Convention Committee, Leadership Election Committee, and Co-Chair for the 265 Project. Unfortunately, Sonia Kant, the President of the PCYA, could not be up here today, but she has done an immense job of helping and co-chairing this project. We are very excited to be a part of this historic event, and happy to announce that we have over 300 youth today in participation, voting, and volunteering, and I think that deserves a round of applause. Back in the fall, the idea came up to start the 265 Project. This is an initiative to bring 265 youth from all over the province, 3 from each constituency, all 87, as well as 2 from each verified campus club as of October 1st, 2016. Thank you to the former chairs of this project, Natalie Warren, Adam Brown, and Cole Harbin. Not only are we excited to welcome so many youth, but we were also excited to have so many females at this event. 40 years ago, this would have not been the case. We have a female president, past president, and a female PCYA president. The PC party is not the old boys club anymore, and I am proud to be standing here today and representing that. The youth of this party are our future. You are looking at future MLAs, future premiers, future party leaders, and maybe the future prime minister. You never know. Thank you to all the constituencies for getting youth involved and helping us achieve this goal. A very special shout out to Edmonton, Strathcona, and Fort Saskatchewan, Bakerville for electing 5 youth each to their board. I would also like to acknowledge the work that the PCYA has done in this project. But they put forward an application process to delegate 20 youth spots who were able to come here. They received over 70 applications from across the province. Jessica Mitchell, Sonia, and the rest of the PCYA did a phenomenal job going through these and electing the most passionate out of this bunch. We would like to also thank Catherine O'Neill, PCA President, as well as the rest of the PCAA for being so helping in this project. Not only has the party done a great job, but the campaigns have been an immense help as well. Getting as many youth as possible and to see so many youth helping on campaigns really shows that the party is not going anywhere anytime soon. Finally, we would like to thank the Convention Committee. This event would not be possible without them. If you have any questions or want to get involved in the PCYA, stop at the table located just outside the doors, and we have some amazing PCYA members hanging out and willing to answer any questions. Thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful convention, and we hope you enjoy your stay in Calgary. Enjoy the Big Ideas panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily. All right, now for a little bit of official business. Yesterday, for those of you who were here, I introduced to you our returning officers for the convention. I've invited them back up here today to share a few more thoughts about how today's vote will unfold. Please welcome Josh Traptow and former Premier Dave Hancock.
Thanks, Ali. Dave is back in the registration room CROing, so I'm just going to run through a little bit today of how the voting is going to work, how alternates are going to happen, and then just give a little bit more housekeeping. So just a reminder that if you are a delegate or an alternate, you need to register by 11 o'clock today. If you don't register by 11 o'clock, your name will be struck from the voters list and you will not be able to vote. If you are an alternate after 11 o'clock until 2:30, you can come next door to Hall C and we will let you know whether or not we are upgrading you to be a delegate. Voting will be from 12:30 to 3 o'clock. If you all come at the same time, you will all be standing in line and there's nothing I can do about it. So come in droves. Come later and don't all come at the same time because then there'll be a lineup and you'll just have to wait in line. What else can I tell you? If you have any questions in general about voting, please come next door. We're happy to answer any questions. Some of you yesterday, when you received your badge, you may not have been scanned properly. If you don't think you were scanned, just come next door and we can let you know whether or not you were scanned. If you were scanned, great. If you weren't scanned, we'll put you into the system and you'll be good to go. So if you know of anyone that is not registered yet, they need to register by 11 o'clock. If they don't register by 11 o'clock, they will not be eligible to vote. Starting at 11 o'clock, we'll start upgrading alternates. When you come in to vote, all you need is your delegate pass with a barcode and a picture ID so we can confirm your ID. There's nothing else that we have to check. We don't have to sign anything. We will just scan you. We will give you your ballot. You will vote, and you will leave. Should there be a second ballot, it will be the same process, but there will only be 2 names on the ballot. The ballot that you'll be given at 12:30 will have 3 names. You only choose 1 name. If when we're counting that person does not get 50% plus 1, the bottom 3rd candidate is dropped from the list. We then go to a second ballot, and the top 2 go for the second ballot, and obviously there'll be a 50% plus 1 after that, or unless there's a tie, then the president of PC Alberta will break the tie. If you have any questions, please come and find Dave and myself. We're more than happy to answer them and walk you through the process. Have a great day, enjoy the speeches, thank you for being here, and thank you for voting and taking an interest in your party.
Thanks, Josh. Friends, this great province technical difficulties. Friends, this great province we live in is suffering. We are suffering from 2 years of policies that are hurting Albertans. Calgary, in particular, has been hit pretty hard by these policies implemented by the current government. To discuss some of these issues, but also to think about some creative solutions, we have 3 very special guests with us today for a thought-provoking and what we hope will be a lively discussion about the future of Alberta. The Calgary Big Ideas Panel will feature George Brookman, CEO of West Canadian, the Honourable Michelle Rempel, Member of Parliament for Calgary Nose Hill, and Terry Rock, Executive Director of Alberta Small Breweries, as our panelists. The PCAA Vice President of Policy, Jason Copping, will moderate this discussion. Would you please all join me in welcoming these distinguished people?
Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Ali, for the kind introduction. My name is Jason Copping. I'm the Vice President of Policy. And it's great to see such a large number of people here, especially given that I know that some of the hospitality suite went to 3 a.m. early this morning. To see this many people in the room, well caffeinated, it's going to be a great discussion. You know, the AGM last spring, we had over 1,000 people attend. And then last fall, a policy conference. We also had over 1,000 people attend. And you heard the numbers this morning. Today, we have 2,000 registered delegates. And this shows that people care about the party, that people care about the province, and people want change to improve the lives of Albertans. And there are a number of major issues facing Albertans. The economy, unemployment remains stubbornly high. Technology, it's changing how we work, how we live, and it represents a tremendous opportunity, but also potential threat in terms of how it impacts us. And on social development, despite the relative wealth in our society and great sense of community in this province, we still have poverty in our midst, and we have an opportunity to build even stronger communities. So to address these big issues, we need big ideas. And as a party, even though this weekend is about leadership, as a party, it's also about ideas that when we win government, we will have ideas and we will implement them to make Alberta a better and stronger place. So to get this conversation started, we've invited 3 distinguished guests who agreed to come in and share some of their big ideas. So on my left is George Brookman. He's well known in Calgary's business and volunteer community, President and CEO of West Canadian Industries, Director on numerous corporate and not-for-profit boards, including Penn West Energy Trust and Flames Foundation. I could actually take the whole hour just listing all the stuff George has done, but I'm not going to do that because we want to hear from him. Past president of the Calgary Stampede and Rotary Club of Calgary. But given that this is an intimate coffee chat among 1,500 people, I asked all of our panelists to share one thing with me so I can share with you so we can make a connection. And so George basically shared with me that in 1971, I don't know how you did this, it must have been before you were born, but in 1971, he was one of the first organizers of the Premier's Dinner, then just after Premier Lougheed won and hosted that. And he shared not only that at that time, they actually sold, the cost to go to a Premier's Dinner was $101, not 100, 101, because they wanted to beat all the other dinners by $1, and they sold it out. So please welcome George. Next is Michelle Rempel, Member of Parliament, Calgary Nose Hill, official opposition critic for immigration, refugees, and citizenship, former Minister of State responsible for Western economic diversification, and former Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment. What may be a little less well known is that Michelle used to be the director of the University of Calgary Institutional Programs Division, and in this role she was focused on innovation and responsible for a program to help academic researchers apply their findings and turn them into commercial products and services, truly driving innovation and help expand the Alberta economy. And when I asked her to share something, in addition to being a classical pianist, this last weekend she was in Oklahoma shooting a number of hands in practice. So please welcome Michelle Rempel. And last but not least, Dr. Terry Rock. Terry is a principal of Rock Strategy and Leadership, providing advisory services to businesses and the arts community. He's the founding president and CEO of the Calgary Arts Development Authority. He's left that role now, but he was the individual that got it started. And that's Canada's first municipally owned agency dedicated to the growth of the arts sector. He is an assistant professor, or was an assistant professor at the Haskayne School of Business, and still teaches strategy and business there. And when I asked him to share a story, he indicated to me that he's wearing the cufflinks that his grandfather wore, and he is his grandfather's namesake. And his grandfather, which inspired him to get into public service and get involved in the community, who was a councillor at Brandon. And he also explicitly said to me that the Google search that found him as a beer-drinking champion in his university days may or may not be true. So please welcome Dr. Terry Rock. So in terms of format this morning, we're going to divide this into two sections. The first section, we're going to ask each panelist to speak from their own perspective about the biggest thing that we can do as a province to improve the lives of Albertans. And then the section, and they'll present each, a few minutes, share their ideas. And then the second section, we'll ask a series of questions and more of a panel debate. I told them that we want to be interesting, keep it interesting. It's okay if we have different opinions, but when the fisticuffs start flying, I'm going to have to call Ali up to actually pull everybody apart, right? So I'd like to start with George. From your perspective, what is the biggest thing that we can do as a province to improve the lives of Albertans, particularly in supporting the economy? George.
Well, thank you, Jason, and what a pleasure to be asked to do this. I couldn't help but hear Emily say this is no longer the old boys' party, but I have to tell you, Emily, there's a few old boys around who got a little life left in them yet, and I'm one of them. Although I notice here, I have the dullest socks at the stage. You notice this? Look at those socks. I wonder how many old boys will put those blue socks on this morning. I had a friend, Joe Brager, late Joe Brager, some of you would have known him, and Joe used to often say, George, remember this, there is nothing new under the sun. There is no crisis that we haven't had before. There isn't any competition we haven't had before. There aren't any jokes that haven't been told before. When there's a crisis or there's a problem or there's an opportunity, look back and find out what others did before you. And I think that advice is very, very relevant to what you folks are all doing here today and what we're all thinking about right now. I love the story of the comedian. There's a comedian who has the story about a woman sitting on an airplane and she's grousing because it's 20 minutes late and her drink won't come and too hot in the airplane. And he says, and the comedian in his act says, lady, you are going to fly. You are going to fly 35,000 feet above the earth in a plane, sitting in a leather seat, watching television and having lunch. You are going to fly. You have to think about the opportunities. History repeats itself. Right now, we have in Alberta everything that we need. Think about it. Think how many countries have as much fresh water as we have. Think about how many countries have as much great agriculture as we have. Even dairy cows, Dr. Chalik. Think about the energy that we have. Think about what we have in this province and how do we take advantage of that. And most of all, what we have is Albertans, educated, industrious, entrepreneurial, and enthused about their province. And we have to capture that spirit if we want this province to move forward. I believe one of the things we have to do is start reinvesting in our own province. In 1973, the Conservative government started the Alberta Energy Company, $10 a share, and only Albertans could buy those shares. 60,000 shareholders were registered as shareholders the first time Alberta Energy had their first annual meeting. It's time now to think about doing something like that again. Could be for technology, could be for cancer research, could be for healthcare, could be for pipelines, but let's start something that Albertans can invest in as Albertans. How many times have you said, how many times have you looked at your children or your friends and said, I could have bought that house for such and such $1 20 years ago. I could have bought that land. I could have bought this for 20 years. This is the moment, right now. Things are low, prices are low, interest rates are low. It's time for us to reinvest in Alberta. So my first suggestion, or my first big idea, if you want, is to go back to 1973, look at how we set up Alberta Energy Company, which, by the way, was ultimately sold to Pan-Canadian and became Encana. That was a tremendous idea at the time. And I believe the second part we should be doing is reaching out to Albertans with an Alberta savings bond, a premium bond, a bond that pays 0.5% or 1% more than any other bond in the country, but you have to have an Alberta address to buy it. And I believe that if we start... Thank you very much. I didn't expect that reaction, Jason. I should have had more coffee. I really believe if we start looking for ways for Albertans to reinvest in our own province, instead of going to Toronto, instead of going to the States, instead of going to Europe to borrow billions of dollars, let's start borrowing the money from each other. We can turn this thing around. So that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. You got us started on the right foot, so now turn it over to Michelle. So from your perspective, what is the biggest thing that we can do as a province to improve the lives of Albertans?
So the buzzword that everybody talks about, economic diversification. So, as was mentioned, my background is in intellectual property management and technology commercialization. That's actually how I started off life. I spent several years both in Manitoba and here in Alberta taking technologies that were created at our universities and bringing them to market. Then later in my career, I sat sort of on the other side of the desk as Minister of State for Western Economic Diversification. So when we asked the question, how do we diversify Alberta's economy? It was interesting. I was sitting in the Haskayne School of Business yesterday with a group of last year or fourth year business students, and this was the topic of discussion. And I sort of interjected in the middle of the conversation, and I said, well, what does business manage to? If you're working for a company or you want to start a business, what are you managing to? And they looked at me like I was an alien. Because we forget that business manages to profit and loss, first and foremost. I know that there's a lot of discussion around, the triple bottom line, but you can't have a triple bottom line if you don't have a single bottom line. And so I think that when we talk about economic diversification, the propensity is, and what the left wants us to see, is they want us to be dependent on government. When I was in Manitoba, I grew up in Manitoba, and I watched an NDP government successively over a 17-year period steal the entrepreneurial spirit from a province. And what do I mean by that? Entrepreneurship happens when the opportunity cost for you of taking a risk and starting a business, that promise of profit, that promise of opportunity, that promise of making some wealth is greater than the risk of doing so. And what we're socialized to think of, and what the left wants us to think, is that we shouldn't take that risk, that the value that we should just have is stability, and that we should let government manage everything. And that's wrong. That's what steals the spirit and the soul of a community. So to economic diversification. That's really awesome. You know you're well prepared for a speech when your scribbly little notes go all over the place. We have to understand first, there's nothing on those, okay, there we go, that's good. The first thing that government needs to do to create that framework in which entrepreneurship happens, where people take that risk, is to have a strong public policy framework that allows that risk to happen. And that was my first priority as economic diversification minister. People would always go to me and say, well, how much money are you spending on this? Spending money is not an outcome in and of itself. For me, what was more important, what I think Alberta needs to do provincially, is put that public policy framework back together, which the NDP has stolen from us. So first, we need to figure out how Alberta can capitalize on new trade agreements that Canada's signed with the European Union. We need to have a strong voice at the table as the Liberals prepare to sign Canada's future away in negotiation with the United States. We need to stand up for our rights in terms of trade and then figure out how business interacts with that across industrial sectors so that we're not losing a competitive advantage through trade agreements. We need to ensure that, as George said, one of the greatest assets that we have in Alberta are our people, our skilled labor force. How do we keep skilled labor here? Especially in a time when we're seeing an economic downturn. How do we keep skilled labor in the province? That's a big question. We need to ensure that we have a competitive tax environment. When we hear our neighbors to the south saying, we're taking away red tape and regulation that's unnecessary and lowering taxes for job-creating companies and families, if we're not following suit, business won't go there. That opportunity cost calculation for entrepreneurship won't happen. So point number one, this isn't a big idea. This is common sense. We need to have a public policy framework that encourages private sector growth, that doesn't steal the soul of our community and stop us from wanting to start businesses. Point number two, we need to understand what a public good is. The left would have us think that the state should run everything, that everything is a public good, but it's not. There is a role. We know that government doesn't create wealth. We know that private industry does. So we as a party need to show Albertans what a public good is. I believe that there is a role for government in ensuring that we have a strong education system, that we have a strong educated population, labor force, a healthy population, and that our educational institutions that create research, that there's incentive for people to create innovative products. We're doing a good job at that right now, but asking how we're delivering those services over time is important. Point number three, I strongly feel that we need to dismantle the quote-unquote innovation ecosystem in Alberta. So for any of you who don't know what that means, there's an entire industry of consultants and bureaucrats that are supposed to create jobs through economic diversification. I remember walking into one of these agencies that's government funded, that we spend a lot of money on, and watching 30 bureaucrats do a sticky note exercise for 6 hours. And I asked them, what are you doing? Like, we're paying all your salary, what are you doing? Well, and it was, quote, we're creating synergy. Well, what is that? Well, I don't know. The fact remains that for almost 30 years, we have spent so much money on these bureaucratic organizations that do little to actually deliver services for small startup companies. And I think that that money could be, to George's point, and I'm sure Terry's going to have some idea, if we agree that they're a public good, if we want to have a venture capital fund or something, we can have that debate down the road, but we surely shouldn't be pouring money into agencies that provide little or no value in terms of job creation. The fourth element is I believe that we need to harness the strength of our primary industry as opposed to denigrating it. People always say that we need to diversify the Alberta economy, and they forget the fact that the energy sector brings wealth, it brings capital, it brings talented people, and it brings receptor capacity for secondary technologies like clean technology, like production-efficient technology for the energy sector. So instead of, being ideologically opposed to it, having, a prime minister say in one part of the country, oh, I'd like to phase out the energy sector because it's somehow dirty, why wouldn't we use the wealth in that to create long-term economic growth? We haven't done a good job of that yet, but we can. So things like closing the delta between the price that we get for our oil, given our current market access, and getting our oil to Tidewater. There's an economic diversification right there. Low-hanging fruit, right? So that's, and I'm almost done, I promise. I could go on and on that point. I don't understand why when people talk about economic diversification, they don't look at the fact that our energy sector creates wealth and gives us huge opportunities. We just need to be a little bit more strategic about it over the long term. The last point, my big idea, which is not a big idea, is that we just need to get out of the way. Oftentimes, people look to jurisdictions like Israel. Israel, for those of you who have looked at the Startup Nation, or read the Startup Nation, the reality, I've traveled to Israel, the reality is Israel doesn't have a lot of other things to export, right? They've really had to be innovative in order to create wealth and create economic growth. In Alberta, when we've got such a wealth of resource, sometimes people will say, look, I'm just going to go work in the energy sector. I don't really want to start a business. The question becomes, how does government create that policy framework such that even in good times, people want to go and start a business? And certainly things like a carbon tax, increases in CPP premiums, increases in the price floor of labor, all of those things disincent business from happening. So government needs to get out of the way in order for people to take risk. And I'll close with this, just to reemphasize this point. I had this conversation yesterday. Everybody looks to Silicon Valley. Everybody looks to California and saying, you know, California has this wonderful cluster, it does start up so well, but the reality is that California was in the right place at the right time. That's where the revolution, technology revolution really started. And what happened was you had a group of really smart people with a disruptive technology that changed how we did business. And then the government, thanks George, allowed that to flourish. So I don't understand why Alberta is ripe for that sort of a disruptive technology to be able to put in it. But we have to make sure that government doesn't get in the way of that happening. I look at Calgary's response to Uber. Oh my God. Why did we want to regulate away a change that was so important? And it's going to happen anyways. So that's it. My big idea is more common sense, and I think we need to use it more often.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And last, Terry, from your perspective, what is the biggest thing that we can do as a province to improve the lives of Albertans? And particularly from the perspective from a social development and a social community perspective as well.
Great, thanks, Jason. Well, I think I have to start out by saying I'm here first as an Albertan. I'm not a member of any political party. And I think one of the things that gets in the way of us actually going after big ideas is that I believe our civic imagination is stunted by partisanship. So I'm going to start there. You know, I think there's a foundation that I'm going to base this on that says our society is going through major change. We are going to experience major change, and it's going to be very disruptive to people's livelihoods right now. And these are things that have been brought up already, but automation, artificial intelligence, roboticization are coming, whether we want them to or not. So if you happen to follow the beer industry like I do, a few months ago, Budweiser had their first delivery of beer with no driver in Colorado. So what's going to happen to our society when artificial intelligence and these kinds of things take over? You know, I think maybe even politicians might be able to be automated, but at least it would be artificial intelligence. So I think, you know what, these things are coming, so how are we going to create value in this kind of world? We have been successful in Alberta because of the blessing of natural resources, for sure, but also because of the spirit of taking risk and, importantly, ingenuity. So Albertans have proven the ability to solve some of the world's toughest engineering problems. This is big stuff, and we can do it in Alberta. And so, for example, if there's going to be a jurisdiction that figures out clean technology, I put a big bet on Alberta. So how do we get there? I think one of the things that you're seeing globally right now is that from a social perspective, there's a huge opportunity for a jurisdiction to decide to be the most welcoming, open, and accepting place in North America. Let's be known for the way that we embrace difference, the way we support and look after the marginalized, whether it's the LGBTQ community, immigrants, refugees, people who practice minority religions. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Human rights are human rights. If you want to start a GSA at your school to support your peers, then no institution should be there to stop you. In fact, our institutions should protect your ability to do so. Get out of the way when citizens want to help each other. So when we look at the changes that are coming at us, whether it's in 5, 10, or 20 years when long-haul trucking and fast food, all of these things are automated and tens of thousands of people are out of work, how are we going to create value? We're going to have to build our economy on ingenuity and imagination. If we're closed to the amazing diversity that humanity has to offer, we're going to miss out. Conversely, being a tolerant society that celebrates difference is now a competitive advantage, and I think that should be something we set our sights on. So that's my first idea. Let's be the most welcoming province in North America, or place in North America. Second thing I want to talk about is something I spent a lot of time working on. It's social innovation. And if you think about the way that we currently solve social challenges, the provincial government of Alberta spends between $4 and $5 billion on things like social services, youth, and seniors. How much of that is spent on the equivalent of R&D? When you think about how we're trying to solve technology problems or innovate in our industries, how much in the social space do we spend on R&D? The answer is very little. Most of this investment is under the control of nonprofit boards whose first job is about a fiduciary responsibility to the organization, so they go away from risk. When I think about issues like homelessness, there's an old story of people standing next to a stream and a kid comes down, no life preserver, they're drowning, they rescue the kid, and then they're standing there, another kid comes down, they rescue the kid, and finally someone says, maybe we should go look and see where all these kids are coming from, and stop it there. That's what social innovation can do. We can actually readjust the systems to prevent the problems that we currently are 100% of our resources are spent fixing and band-aiding. So I look at the concept of risk capital, and right now we simply give government funding to this. Why can't you invest in this? Why can't you make a return on investment? I look at something like Calgary's drug treatment court as a good example. A study about the drug treatment court looked at 36 participants that went into, that instead of being put in jail, they were given an alternative treatment. Prior to that, they had 36 people had over 1,200 contacts with police. After they went through this program, 2 years later, there was only 32. That's a huge saving, and we have no way to capture it. So why don't we find a way to use things like social impact bonds, where you get a return on investment for solving major social problems. Let's get private capital in to solve social issues. Other jurisdictions have done things like created something called an L3C corporation. That allows a non-profit, you can get a tax write-off, but you can still invest in a profit, but in an organization that instead of being non-profit is low profit. So these are kinds of things that we can do to get private money in to solve social problems, and I'll stop there and look forward to our discussion.
Great ideas from all the panel members, and I'm going to attempt, because we've had a whole range of ideas, to actually just summarize very briefly. So George really talked about we need to reinvest in ourselves, look to the past to help us move forward to the future, set up a Alberta tech company or some type of thing similar to the Alberta Energy Company, and Alberta savings bonds so we can invest in ourselves and use capital to drive the economy, right, and create jobs. And then Michelle spoke passionately about economic diversification. That, quite frankly, we need to support the entrepreneurial spirit in Alberta, which we have in spades, but continue to do so. And so setting up a strong public framework to support taking risk, having government get out of the way of business, lower taxes, a competitive tax environment, clearly define a public good and look at how we deliver services, and support our energy sector, talking about diversification not only with outside the energy sector, but within the energy sector to drive that, because quite frankly, that's what drives a large part of our jobs here in Alberta. And then for Terry, taking a look at particularly the social side, is that the big idea is promoting diversity and making Alberta the most welcome place in the country, to bring in people from all different walks of life with different ideas to support innovation, and then to support social innovation through setting up different corporations, LLCs for not-for-profits, and then also setting up an opportunity for social impact bonds done elsewhere. So did I summarize it generally there, folks? Okay, so then I'd like to take this, and Michelle already ran down the road on terms of talking about economic diversification, in terms of the idea of the entrepreneurial spirit and focusing on energy. But this is something that governments, past governments in Alberta, have been looking at for well over 30 years, right? How do we diversify the economy? And we've had multiple reports on it. 2011, Peterson report. There's, looking at, and we also have had studies looking at not only how do you diversify within the energy sector, but outside the energy sector. So we haven't got it right. Michelle threw down the gauntlet to the rest of the folks saying, look, support the entrepreneurial spirit, get government out of the way, competitive environment. So I'd like comments from either Terry or George. What do you think? What would you do different? How would you support Michelle's ideas?
I'll start. Well, I guess everyone's already figured out that if we had a motto, my motto would be Albertans investing in Alberta. And I think what Michelle said is absolutely true. I think back to the 70s, we were always talking about diversifying the economy, but we always brought it back to energy. And we should have leveraged that money. We should have leveraged those energy dollars into so many other things. We probably have the biggest computer power in Canada outside of Toronto because of the energy industry. But what could we do with that technology in addition to what it does for the energy industry? We are now building, but how many false starts did we have? A cancer center. Why wouldn't we have the finest cancer center in North America in this city and bring people from all over the world here for cancer treatment? We have the research. Michelle mentioned California. I didn't want to mention to her that they have beaches and sunshine. That's one little problem. But the reality is this is a wonderful, wonderful community to live in. And people, if they're incented properly, researchers, doctors, all those people will come to this city if it's the right thing. And we know back in the days, the Heritage Fund and the Tom Baker, we did bring some of the best doctors in the world. So we have to invest in this community. On Tuesday, I was with someone and he said, if you had $5 million to invest right now, and you had to choose between Texas, Colorado, and Alberta, which one would you choose? Or more importantly, which one wouldn't you choose? And the problem is, you wouldn't choose Alberta. And that's what we have to change, no matter what we want to do to diversify this economy.
Thank you, George. Terry.
Yeah, I've used the example of cancer as a good example of one of the exact things where it's about the best and brightest and creating a community that they want to come to and actually deciding as a province that we want to do that. So the Alberta Heritage Fund for Medical Research has attracted people from all over the world to be here because they want to be in a place where great things happen. That's what's going on, and the relative amount of investment it takes to be the world leader is so small, it's crazy not to do it, especially when we're building on a base like that. The other one, I'm getting to cut red tape, because I think the city of Calgary needs to be applauded for something right now. In front of City Council is something called to create the City Centre Enterprise District. So if you haven't seen this, the idea is for 3 years, they are going to eliminate most of the permitting that gets in the way of people starting businesses in downtown Calgary. So if you have a retail store and someone wants to do a pop-up restaurant, go for it. Get all of that friction out of the way. I work to support the Alberta brewing industry, and I can tell you when the Alberta government got rid of a minimum requirement for brewing, entrepreneurship skyrocketed. We are now over 50 licensed breweries in Alberta, and 3 years ago we had 18. And all it took, not all it took, but one of the main reasons that happened is because we got rid of a minimum requirement. Unnecessary red tape. So, and what's holding up breweries from expanding right now? City regulation. So those are things that I think they're just sort of absolutely straightforward, and you unleash the entrepreneurship that is already here.
Thanks, Terry. Michelle, any further comment on this?
I guess just to echo what both of my colleagues have said, I heard a really sobering statistic about 2 weeks ago, and that's that Alberta has fallen from the #1 jurisdiction in North America, or sorry, in the world to invest in oil and gas to number 43 within an 18-month period. And I think when you look at the reasons why that is, it goes back to the fact that we've gotten in the way. Government, specifically, and Terry, I get to be a partisan because I am. This government has done everything to make our province dependent on government. I watched this happen in Manitoba. It's why I left Manitoba. You know, I look at the province of Manitoba. It invested in me, and I didn't give my capital back to that province. And why? Because there is no opportunity to start a business or create wealth in Manitoba that doesn't have government intervention in it. You look at any small business, anything, it's all dependent on government. And the only way, I know this sounds so pedantic and so basic, but it's so true, where our party and Conservatives can create a brighter hope for Albertans is if we provide a vision for government and economic diversification that just gets government out of the way. And I'll leave it at that.
So I do need to just reiterate that I am not partisan, and I'm going to just play devil's advocate a bit. Shell is one of the most well-known companies for long-term strategic planning. They do scenario planning. I have a PhD in strategy, and Shell is one of the organizations you study because of their ability to scope out the long term. So Shell has just divested of Alberta. And so I think there's something in that we need to really pay attention to, that people are placing bets in other ways for other reasons. Now, could we be doing other things to further expand oil and gas in Alberta? Sure. Is that the best long-term bet for us to make? I don't know. It's probably a good short-term bet, but is it a good long-term bet? And so that's where I kind of think, you know, some of the things that we're trying to do in the province right now are in the general long-term track good thinking. And I hate to say it, but that's what I think that a lot of young people think, and we'd be wise to look at those kinds of big corporate decisions and what is the story it's telling us.
And that story, I think, and Michelle mentioned, is telling us is that there doesn't think to be a long-term play given how the government is supporting the entrepreneurial spirit, or perhaps not, in terms of your comment, is getting out of the way. So would it be fair to say, so we summarize, the big idea is support the entrepreneurial spirit, support our energy and gas sector, but even by supporting the entrepreneurial spirit, you'll also support outside of those sectors to drive economic diversification. Would that be a good summary of our conversation? More or less? Okay, great. So the economic diversification in the economy is critically important because you need jobs to put food on the table. So that's the starting point. But great provinces, great communities aren't built by jobs alone. You need other aspects to it as well. You need a place to work and a place to play. And so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how should we think about building vibrant communities? And to kick this question off, I'd like to start with Terry.
Thanks, Jason. Well, so I spent about a decade of my life, a little bit more, thinking about how to make a great city through investing in arts and culture. We ended up with a plan called Living a Creative Life, an arts development strategy for Calgary. And really what that was about is recognizing that every citizen has a creative spark in them, and it's their right as a citizen to have the opportunity to live that out in their life. I want to talk about two things here. The first one is, it goes back to red tape. You're in a place that used to be called the Olympic Plaza Cultural District, and when we were working on how can this be a great public space, we went through a number of exercises where we went to citizens and we showed them pictures of great spaces worldwide, the sidewalk cafes and where you go on vacation and you want to be. And we compared that to what we have in Calgary and said, what do you prefer? And inevitably people preferred narrow streets, trees, cafes. And the reality is that it's illegal to build that kind of public space in Calgary. It's illegal because we are focused on risk aversion and basically we want to control the public sphere. So number one, we actually need to relax a little bit. You know, we have a big prohibition against drinking in public, and other places that we like, they sort of don't mind you have a stroll with a beer or a glass of wine or whatever. So I think that that's number one. What's that? Yeah, here. Okay, great, thanks. So again, that's a red tape thing. So I think that communities want to be vibrant when you get out of the way. I just think that happens. The second one is, and this is a big government thing, so I'm going to lay it down. Iceland is a good example of a place that has figured out youth engagement. And if we want to have vibrant communities, we have to start by recognizing that youth are disengaging from civic life, public life. So what have they done in Iceland? They have created programs where basically every kid is either in the arts or sports after school. They actually make parents pay attention to what their kids are doing by having them sign a thing that says, we understand that this is going on. They give the kids basically free opportunities. They give them actually vouchers to spend on recreation and arts, and they do it. And so in the world, Iceland has the lowest incidence of teen drinking, teen drugs, pregnancy, these kind of things that are all a result of people not being engaged in their community. It means that parents have to get engaged and kids have to get engaged in, and the only body that could deliver something like that is government. So I think that there's a big idea, a big focus there that would in the long run give us vibrant communities.
Great. Thanks, Terry. George and Michelle would like to comment.
Well, I think vibrant cities rely on lots of people working and having a place to spend their money. That's number one. And they have to be safe, and that's number two. And then everything else sort of follows in place of that. I was down about 3 months ago. I was in Kansas City, Kansas. Now, it's just like Saskatchewan without all the glitz and glitter, is what I said. But the reality is, Kansas City, their downtown core, imagine this prairie city, it's as flat as a board, and their downtown core is absolutely a magnet for people, for shopping and for theaters and for their convention center and all those things. And you look at it and you say, why? Well, they've just designed it to make it appeal, and people love it. You know, the problem with this panel is that we're all from Calgary, or at least Terry and I are, and so it's easy to forget that we're representing here Lethbridge and Edmonton and Medicine Hat and Fort McMurray and all those other cities. But the reality is every city in Alberta should be thinking about how to develop their downtown to make them vibrant. Cities that have strong downtown cores, no matter how far out the suburbs go, they tend to be strong cities economically. So my suggestion is that in investing in our cities, look toward the downtowns and make sure that we have safe, vibrant and exciting downtown cores that people want to go to. That's my little throw out for today.
Thanks, George. Michelle.
I'm going to take this back up to 100,000 feet. How do we have a vibrant and safe community? The last 18 months have been the most difficult in my political career because I have, on a daily basis, had to deal with somebody on the phone or calling in my office saying, I've just lost my house, my wife's been out of work for 18 months, I had one fellow last week who had to move to Ontario and leave his kids behind to find work, but he still can't make his child support payment, so he lost his visitation rights. How do we have vibrant communities? We give people purpose by providing them opportunity to work. And I am so concerned for our province right now because I feel like with the unemployment rate where it is, and especially for those of you who are visiting here in Calgary, we've had it so bad. We're over 10% right now. You know, George is talking about our downtown core. The real estate vacancy rate right now, for all intents and purposes, is about 40%. There are just whole swaths of floors that are empty. And to me, what has killed my community spirit and my riding is the fact that there are so many people out of work. And what I'm worried about is that those people are going to start looking elsewhere, and I know they are right now. So the question becomes, and again, I'm sorry to be like a broken record on this, but to me, like, we can talk about all of these initiatives and how we create wealth for investment in arts and culture and all this sort of stuff, but people need to work first. I mean, and we've lost that. There is a crisis here in this province, and this is, for me, this isn't just partisan, even though I'm proud to be a partisan on this issue. We need to get our province back to work first and foremost. And so, you know, how do we create a vibrant community? Right now, we need to take it back to square one, and the only thing that government should be focused on is getting our community back to work right now.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And any additional comments on this subtopic? No? All good? All right. It's nice and succinct.
Can I have one little one?
Okay, go ahead, Terry.
I'm working on a project called Alberta Music Cities, and one of the things that we're working on is finding more opportunities for people who choose a career in music to build that career in Alberta. So I want to just point out that there are many, many other, you know, as a classical pianist, you would know that there are other ways of earning, and that I think that we can actually go a long ways in and it doesn't need public funding, it actually just needs, again, less red tape. There's a lot we can do to actually activate that. Some of the most entrepreneurial people I know are artists and musicians, so I want them to find work as well.
And I think that's a great point. I mean, Alberta does have such a diverse talent pool. We should be looking at ways to incent markets for their talent here in Alberta. Absolutely. My concern is just, oftentimes when we talk about this particular topic, it goes back to what sort of government programming do we need to fund. And with a $70 billion deficit, where are we at? I don't even, who's counting, right? I think that we actually have to look back and say, what is the core operating principle of government right now? And to your point, if there's ways that we can look at, you know, these sort of opportunities that you were talking about in such a way that government isn't paying for it, you know, Premier Ralph Klein made some really hard decisions at one point in time. It was painful, right? We've gone through all that pain for no gain at this point in time, after what's happened in the last couple of months. And that is really concerning to me. So can we have a diverse community? Yes, but I really don't think we should be relying on government funding for initiatives like this right now.
So, I mean, I guess, you know, when I look at the structure of our public finances right now, one of the things I go back to is that I feel like we are spending a lot of money solving the outcomes of things that we didn't do in the past. And so we've gone down a path, and at some point we have to find a way to get out of it. Like, we can't have the highest per capita healthcare costs in the country with one of the youngest and healthiest populations. Like, how are we gonna, we have to get off that path somehow. And so here's where it gets tricky for me, because it isn't, I think it's actually about finding innovative solutions. And that means that we have to go through a period of uncertainty where we're going to allow for certain kinds of investment, for new ways of doing things, and allow them to fail. Because eventually, some will work, and then we'll actually get off the track that we're on. And so that's why I'm a promoter of things like social innovation, and finding ways, and it's such small money to actually make huge structural changes. But if our focus is on cutting or limiting the size of government, I feel like we're missing out. There's a great book I encourage people to read called The Entrepreneurial State, and it's about how this can work. I'm not a massive advocate for all of this stuff unrestrained. I'm just saying to dismiss it is maybe missing some of the challenge.
I really feel I have to say something here. As a conservative, a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, I guess, the reality is I'm not opposed to debt. I doubt if any of you would own a house if you hadn't taken out a mortgage. And if your parents left them the money to buy your house, well, good for you. But the rest of us had to have a mortgage to buy a house. That's completely different than borrowing $20,000 to go to Hawaii for 3 weeks. And what we have to look at, you know, I think we have to be careful as conservatives. I think we have to be very careful that we don't say, we don't like debt, we don't like debt, we don't like debt. Well, I'm going to tell you something. No debt, no progress. Simple as that. You want to build a cancer hospital? You're going to have debt. You want to build a university? You're going to have debt. You want to fix up your downtown core? You're going to have debt. Those are investments in our future as a province and in our future as a nation. So you can't just walk around and say, debt is bad. Debt is not bad. It's how you use the money you borrowed that is what's so important. That's what we're talking about here today.
And I agree. The problem with Keynesian economics is that Keynesians often forget the other side of the equation, which is if you've invested in something and it's creating wealth, you need to pay the debt back. And I think that we've forgotten that in Alberta. I think, you know, I want to build on Terry's comments, just in a slightly different tact, in that we need innovation in government, yet public service is the least innovative industry that we have. There's no propensity to innovate, right? So, you know, some of the things that Terry is talking about, there's actually some merit in discussing. Same with George, where are we using our debt? The problem is, and I think what we can do as a conservative movement in Alberta, is that there's a lot of dogma about what government is and should be and what programs have to be there. If we are going to do some of the stuff that Terry's talking about or use debt properly, we have to question the dogma that's been set up about governments. Things like, what is the best way to manage our healthcare system? How do we deliver education efficiently and effectively? Should government, the role of the state, should the state be have sole responsibility for delivering some social inclusion programming? Or as Terry is saying, how do we use social entrepreneurship in that? The problem is that those discussions are so taboo and so off the realm, and our bureaucracy knows that. There's no propensity for bureaucrats to innovate because they know when there's a taboo topic, politicians, political activists aren't going to put the pressure on it, the political will to change. And so what I think is that as this party, as the Alberta Conservative movement writ large looks at itself in the next 5 years, if this province is going to survive, that has to be something we have to do. All of you have to have the courage to say, this is not a taboo topic, this is my future. And to me, that's, I think, where we can get some of these ideas actually put into implementation. So they're not just big ideas, they're big action.
Well, thanks, Michelle. And it sounds like what you're all saying, the big idea is everything's on the table. Challenge every assumption and look at how we can do things differently, both in terms of delivery to make it happen. Okay, we only have a few more minutes, 2 minutes, so this is going to be a quick fire, and we're not going to do the topic justice, but let's talk about homelessness. So the last thing I want to talk about is how do we address homelessness in our cities in Alberta? We have one example of Medicine Hat, which has addressed it, and very effectively. Is that a model? What can we do? So 30 seconds, and then we'll wrap up. So, George, you want to start?
Well, Calgary had the community to end homelessness, and was actually being very effective until we have this downturn. But I think there are models. I think Medicine Hat is what we should really look at. I think we are working hard. Last week I cut carrots at the drop-in center all Sunday afternoon for 1,200 people. And you know, we have to remember that there are about 4 different categories. There are the people that they're always going to be homeless, and that's sadly a state of affairs. But the reality is there's a lot of people who are working very, very hard and just can't make it in this world. And that's the ones that we have to give a hand up to and help them get started. So there's lots of models around the world, and we should be looking at them and figuring out what we can do. And I think Medicine Hat has made a great start.
Great. Thank you. Terry.
Well, I'm going to go up to early intervention. So I'm a huge fan of the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Center, which people here should all know about. It's a good example. 5 government agencies broke down barriers. I believe it was Premier Hancock that brought in the Children First Act that made it so that these agencies that care about our kids can share information. Can you believe they couldn't share information? So it's very streamlined, and the problem of child abuse is being caught and dealt with, and the numbers they deal with are extreme and so sad, but their effectiveness has gone from, say, a 30% conviction rate for someone to over 70% in a very short period of time. Is something to watch, and we should invest in it. And the reason I say that is that because downstream, when the people that we see who are struggling with homelessness are typically, they have a mental health issue, especially if they're chronic. And I was friends with someone who just died of a fentanyl overdose, a homeless man that spent time at my church. And I've seen it up front, and it comes from their life. And so places like, things like what Sheldon Kennedy's Center is doing are absolutely where we need to invest and just open up and make it work early, and then we will, in the long run, not have to deal with homelessness. The other thing is give people a home. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Terry. And last word to you, Michelle.
On the topic of homelessness and social inclusion, I think that the Conservative movement needs to first be compassionate. We're the party of compassion. It's how we get there that is going to be the task for this party after this weekend. But I'm going to close with this. Women experience higher incidences of poverty and homelessness than men do. And I think that in order to address the issue of homelessness, we have to look at some of the unique social inclusion issues that often face women, including childcare, including access to services, incidences of sexual assault that aren't reported or taken seriously by the police. Oftentimes in Canada we think that those issues don't exist, but they do, especially in new Canadian women communities. So I wish I had a whole hour just to talk about this issue, but my encouragement to the party is that as we go forward, let's have a compassionate, smart approach to social inclusion issues that help people as much as possible escape that cycle of poverty and have long-term prosperity rather than just aiming towards a level of working poor.
Thank you very much. So this is just starting for us. This weekend is about leadership, but also we wanted to start thinking about what are the big ideas that we can do as a party to solve some of the major problems. I think we heard lots today, lots of food for thought, and as we get to our policy development in terms of the next round, we can use these ideas. So on behalf of the party, I want to thank George Brookman, Michelle Rempel, and Terry Rock for coming today.
All right, that was a great session. Thanks again to all of you. So we've got, we're going to have a bit of a break to set up the stage for the next part of the program. We'll take about 10 minutes. Refreshments are still outside. And if I could ask everyone to come back in within that 10 minutes, we'll get started on the candidate speeches, which is what everyone is here for. So 10 minutes and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.